Hello, my name is Michal Hucko and welcome to another lecture of our REST API class. In this lecture, we're going to talk about what is REST or what is REST API. Let's start with explaining the term REST. REST is a shorthand for representational state transfer. And in general, this bunch of words doesn't mean anything useful for absolute beginners. So let me just explain with my words what is the REST. REST is an architectural style which we use for implementing the HTTP servers. In the previous lectures, we were talking about the HTTP protocol and we were talking about the communication between the client and server. I showed you how to implement your HTTP server using Python. And you could see that, you can implement the server as you want. You can put there anything. And if everyone would be just, implementing the servers as they want, there will be a bunch of craziness in the world because everyone would have different HTTP servers. To overcome this problem, people came with an idea of unifying the implementation of HTTP servers, which are dedicated for storing the data, because that is exactly the purpose of REST APIs. So we use REST APIs for storing or querying the data, which are most of the time stored in some relational databases or any kind of database. Of course, there are some exceptions where the REST APIs are used for something else, not just storing the data, but in general, or for the purpose of simplicity of this course or tutorial or the class, we're gonna talk about storing the data using the REST API. Fine, the REST API concept is connected with 4 key letters, C, R, U, and D, or CRUD. The C letter stands for, the REST API should be responsible for creating the data. So you are using the concept of creation when you want to insert something through the REST API. So for example, imagine you have an eShop and you want to create an order. So when you are creating an order, you are using a REST API for creation of this order, and you are applying the principle of creation, so the C word. Then you have the read, the R from the CRUD word. The R stands for read, and you apply read when you want to retrieve some information from the server using the REST API. Then you have the update functionality, which of course it's for updating the record, which was previously inserted through the REST API. And then you have the concept of deleting something. So the D word stands for delete. Okay, so that was the CRUD. These letters from the CRUD are mapped almost one-to-one to HTTP methods. And I'm saying almost because you can use, there are 2 kinds of read HTTP methods, but I will come to this later. So the C or the create word is connected to a post method. So last time when I was even talking about the post and HTTP post, I mentioned that you can send something with the body into the server. And you are using this body with the post method when you want to create something through your REST API. Then the R word stands for read. You are using the get method when you want to retrieve something from the REST API. You are using put method because you want to update something, and delete, you are using the delete method because you want to delete something. Okay, now I just want to show you an example of a publicly available REST API, which is luckily implemented in the Django REST framework, which I'm gonna explain or we're gonna talk about through the rest of this class. You can find this publicly available REST API on the URL swappy.dev. So I'm sharing my screen, and as you can see, this is the swappy.dev, and the swappy stands for Star Wars API. Okay, so the fans of Star Wars created this API so you can have detailed information about each films or starships inside this. I will come to this later. In this swappy, you can see some customs or some rules which are applied during the REST API. Sadly, because this is a publicly available API, the authors decided to make publicly available only the read part from the CRUD. This API allows you only to read the data which are stored behind the scenes on the server. This API doesn't allow you to post something, update something, or delete something, but for the purpose of explanation, this is exactly what we need. So in the REST API concept or in the REST API architectural style, you are working with the concept of resources. So if you scroll down, there is a documentation page on swappy.dev/documentation. And here on the left, you will see that this API supports these many resources. You can think of resources as objects, which are going to be stored behind the scenes. Imagine you have an iShop selling cars. The cars itself will be stored somewhere in the database. So the resource type would obviously be a car. In this case, for the purpose of swappy.dev, the resources are root. Okay, root is not something which you would understand out of the box, but for example, films, yeah. So the API stores information about films. So logically, when you're going to retrieve or write some information about films, you're going to refer to this part of information through the films keyword. There is the starships, or there are starships, there are vehicles, species, and planets, okay? So let's retrieve some data about films. So if you want to retrieve the data about films, the key part or the key concept of API is the specification of resource through the path part. So as I mentioned previously, the HTTP request, which we're gonna send from now on through the web browser, but in the future we're going to use different tools like Postman. So the HTTP request has this URL specification. And in the URL we have this path part, which is specifying behind the domain name and subdomain, okay? So and as you can see, it's quite custom out there to specify the path with the API keyword, but it's not like a rule, right? You can put it there or not. But the important part is going next. Next, when you want to retrieve or read from the CRUD some specific information about some specific film in the database or behind the scenes through the REST API, you are using the keyword which is specifying the resource, yeah, in the plural, and then you are specifying the unique identifier of this resource. So in this case, you are interested into the films. And this is a rule of REST API. So you are specifying the resources, or you are interacting with the resources behind the scenes with dedicated keywords. So when you go for this URL without the \1, the API will return. This is a return, and because the authors are very smart, they provide this nice tool which can then visualize this output in your web browser, which is out of the box feature of the Django REST framework, which I'm gonna show you later. But here the key part is this part here. So here this is the response, the HTTP response. This is a status bar or status line saying like HTTP 200 and phrase is okay. So everything was okay, everything was successful. And because we were like querying the endpoint with the plural without any specification of one unique film, we will receive a results part. Okay, this naming convention, it's up to the authors of the API, but this is quite common. So the results part contains an array. So this is a JSON, as I mentioned before, and this results part contains an array of the films which are there. But it's quite common that you are not sending back the whole list of films if there are, let's say, millions of films, but it's common to send just a subset. In this case, they are sending you 6 of them, okay? And here you can see like results contains 6 films in an array. And the first film has a title of New Hope, A New Hope. It's an episode ID 4. There is some information about opening crawl. There is some information about director, producer. When was it released? What were the characters? And here you can see those are the URL addresses of those dedicated resources. Again, these are people. This is a people resource, right? So you are referring to them through the people keyword. And as you can see, those are some specific people. Why? Because there is some specific identifier. So this is the read part. You can read in 2 ways. Either you are retrieving general data about some resource through the keyword, or you are retrieving some specific data through a specific identifier, which you specify behind the general keyword. Okay? So, and then it's as simple as clicking on it. So for example, you are not interested in all the films or top 6 of the films, but you're interested in this particular one. If you scroll down at the end, there is the URL address for this particular film. So it's https swappy.dev/api/films/1. Okay, so the unique identifier is 1. When I click on this, I will get just the JSON response for this particular film. So this is the get method. Now some of you may say, okay, and how about the rest of the CRUD, like create, update, and delete? Well, those are quite simple. Except running the get method, you will run a post method in case of create. And because you are creating something new, you cannot just post on some existing identifier because the resource object doesn't exist yet. You are creating it now with the body, which you will specify within the post request. So you need to always run the post request on just the plural form of the keyword and not the identifier, the unique identifier. Okay, so that's the post. That's the create part. When we are talking about the update part, the situation is simple as in the get part. Because the resource already exists, you are updating an existing resource with the put, as always. You are specifying their identifier of that resource with the body, which will be replacing the old record inside or for that particular unique identifier. So that's the update. And then there is the delete, and the delete is as simple as get. Instead of running get, there will be a delete, and then that particular record will be deleted. And as you can see, REST APIs have these simple rules: create, read, update, delete, which are mapped to the HTTP methods like post, put, get, and update, right? The order is different, okay, but you are smart enough to find it out on yourself, right? But yeah, so based on these simple rules and the simple rules in the path, everything is much simpler. And with these simple rules, you can define most of the databases behind the scenes and most of the data exchange out there for your either microservice or web applications which are living out there. Fine. So this was just a short introduction into REST APIs. I left it after the talk about the HTTP because I think first you need to understand how internet works and how the HTTP protocol works, and then you can understand why is REST important. Because without REST, yeah, we can live without REST. Everyone can live without it. Yeah, there are even some alternatives like SOAP, but we ain't gonna talk about SOAP in this tutorial, right? But without the architectural styles like this, then there is a chaos. Everyone can write anything as they want, and then it will be problematic to reuse some code. When you write your API in this way, everyone can use it. And everyone can expect the behavior for resources when they will specify the requests like this, right? So it's simpler for everyone and everyone is much happier. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope I will see you in the next one.